Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Evans, LLG's Chief Executive, and I'm joined this week by Dennis Hall, our Bulletin Editor. Hi, Dennis.
Hello, Deborah.
Now, as the Bulletin led last week, tributes continue to flood in for our past President, Suki Binjal. We've received many inquiries as to the arrangements, tributes and donations to honour Suki. We have, of course, been mindful of the sudden shock with which we all received the news and have been keen to ensure that any steps taken have the full approval of her husband, Paul. We've set up a dedicated email box to capture tributes to Suki and condolences to the family, which we will collate into a book. We would like to invite you to send these by email to sukibinjal.memorial@llg.org.uk. And if you didn't manage to catch that, it'll be on our website later. Now, for those of you who wish to send cards or letters of condolence, please send these to Mr. Paul McMahon, Care of Lawyers in Local Government, to our postal address in Horsham. So, Dennis, what shall we look at this week?
Deborah, there is a curious silence on the issue of standards. The government has said nothing of substance about its plans since the general election. It has faced accusations about cronyism, through appointments to government and donations from wealthy supporters, and they now acknowledge that damage has been caused to them. Now, we know that certain plans for change were part of the Labour manifesto for changes in standards at national level, but nothing was ever said or promised about the local authority member conduct standards regime. Now, all of this clearly matters to us. The issues with enforcing member codes of conduct haven't suddenly gone away, of course. And time again, we learned during the last 14 years that trends concerning standards of behaviour nationally do impact upon standards in local government. Government really does set the tone in terms of standards of behaviour in public office. Now, a recent paper caught our attention from the Constitutional Unit at the University College of London, and this discusses why the government need to engage with this important topic right now. And we agree with other commentators that it should include immediate reforms to the local government standard regime, because it's all part of the same picture.
Now, before the election, Labour promised to make broad changes to the standards regime, yet 3 months after the election, progress on many aspects of their plans has been slow, and the new government has already been accused of ethical missteps. So it's not the best start for the government.
Indeed, and the government is in danger of missing the opportunity to strengthen standards in public life. After more than 3 months in office, there's been little more than vague statements about future good intentions and self-inflicted and unnecessary problems, such as over a series of appointments of political allies to the civil service.
Now, before the election, Labour promised a fresh approach to standards, focusing on creating a new Ethics and Integrity Commission, giving the independent advisor on ministers' interests full powers to initiate investigations into ministerial conduct and tighter enforcement of rules on post-Whitehall employment. Now, this was part of a broader constitutional reform package that included planned changes to the ways in which Parliament operates and the devolution settlement.
And the initial signs from the new government were very promising. On his first day in office, Keir Starmer met Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor, to demonstrate his commitment to high standards for ministers. But since then, there's been nothing apart from non-committal parliamentary answers. A revised ministerial code normally appears very early in a new parliament, and an agreed draft was ready soon after the election, but it apparently got stuck somewhere in the system.
Now, one explanation seems to be that the standards issues are not seen as an immediate priority, not one of the government's core missions. So hence there's no urgency about strengthening safeguards. It's not even an issue for the current session of Parliament or even perhaps the first term. Now, this is very concerning in the light of recent events.
Well, Deborah, this is indeed very naive, isn't it? And a serious misjudgment in our view for a number of reasons. First, this question of trust in our political system is fragile and badly needs rebuilding. And second, the new government can only do that by taking action to strengthen standards as well as reforming public services. And, something or someone will do something wrong. as always happens, such is the nature of political and human life.
The government needs to recognise the importance of bringing in constitutional safeguards. It may well have started work on this, we don't know, but the first 100 days has been more of a blow for the Prime Minister than might have been predicated. According to a YouGov poll, nearly half of those who voted Labour in the election, 47%, say they had positive expectations of Starmer's government but feel let down so far, with only 3 in 10, 30%, feeling Labour has done as well as they'd hoped. Transparent rules that are enforced would surely increase public trust and confidence. Strengthening standards costs nothing in terms of additional public expenditure, nor is there any need for complicated and time-consuming legislation.
So, what should the government address? Well, it is recognised that there is a series of steps, most of which can be taken quickly and should be taken right now. First, publish a new ministerial code with more effective means of enforcement. Second, tighten the arrangements for ministers and senior public officials to identify, manage, and report on conflicts of interest. And third, build a clearer, more consistent and transparent system to regulate lobbying of ministers, senior public officials, and special advisors. And finally, fourth, more thought needs to be given to the remit and powers of the proposed Ethics and Integrity Commission, especially its relations with other constitutional watchdogs. So far, all we've heard is an announcement that the rules concerning ministers and hospitality will now be tightened. Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden told the BBC that ministers would now have to declare hospitality linked to their government job in their MP's register from now on. Deborah.
Now, above all, the controversies of recent weeks over a number of appointments to the civil service and the donations debacle have shown that ministers can't just brush aside such criticism on the grounds that their intentions are good. Now, the government should reassess and reset its approach to standards. It needs to include local government within that reset, not least because there is so much good practice that central government could learn from. And we support a new look at that report from the Committee on Standards in Public Life, which looked at local government ethical standards, because without enforceable rules, and here we are talking sanctions, how can anyone be held to proper account? And on that note, you can get coverage of many more items from the bulletin and by listening to the Grapevine podcast. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too.
Goodbye.